Alright, hi guys. So if you don't live under a rock, or I don't know, maybe you do and you're not totally in the beauty sphere like I am, you either know or you don't know that Becca Cosmetics sent a release that they will be closing down in September 2021. So I just want to talk about it a little bit and how I think that's going to change the beauty industry, what that means for some other brands who could possibly be next. So my first thing I kind of wanted to bring to light, I guess part of the reason this whole happened was, a main issue was because of COVID. Not a lot of people are purchasing the unnecessary things, which I think you can clearly say makeup is not a necessity. We don't need it to survive. So, you've got to think of the millions and millions of people who lost their job during COVID, who can't support their lifestyle the way they used to live pre-COVID. It's not surprising to me to see a brand who has to close their doors. I think I'm more surprised that I've only heard of one brand, which is Becca. I can't say I'm surprised it is Becca, and for a lot of reasons, which I'll get to. But I'm more surprised that there hasn't been more closing down like Becca. One of the main reasons why I think Becca is closing doors, was because of COVID. Their sales aren't high, or maybe they're spending more money on the company than they are in the product that they are selling. They're not making a good enough profit off of sales during COVID, but I don't think COVID is the only reason why Becca is closing down. I think there are a lot of factors, and if you've been following any of their past releases, even within just this past year, even in the past 2 years, they're just odd. We had the releases with Khloe Kardashian and Malika. It was just odd. It was just out there. Not to mention, to collab with famous people, not influencers, has to be so much more money. So they're shelling out this money to pay these more famous celebrities to collab with them than they could just an influencer. The people that are purchasing from them aren't necessarily the people who are following the beauty community. If we had an influencer that collabed with Becca, the chances of the beauty community picking up that collab is kind of higher than it would be if it was Khloe Kardashian, Malika. They had Barbie Ferreira recently. It was from Euphoria. That's an odd collab to me. Congratulations to her for collabing with Becca and to get the opportunity to collab with a makeup brand, but it doesn't fit. It's still an odd collaboration. I think if they went with an influencer, the turnout and the product that was purchased, I feel, would have been a lot higher. A few years ago, they've had a few eyeshadow palettes that have been released. They had like this volcanic one, the seashell style one, and they're just all a bit odd. They don't fit in the Becca collection. We think of Becca as beautiful highlights, but there's so much more to them. They had an amazing lipstick love line, and I loved that. And it's unfortunate that the lines like that aren't getting the hype that other Becca products have been getting. So another reason why I think this has been really affecting Becca is their most coveted product is a highlighter. You're not going through a highlighter nearly as fast as you are a concealer, a foundation, an eyebrow product. Becca has no eyebrow products. They do have concealers and foundations, but they're very full coverage. There's only one specific niche in their line for foundations and concealers, and they don't have other base lines that would benefit a constant repurchase of product. I think if they had more light coverage foundations, it would have done better. They did have a skin tint, which when it first released, I thought that was great. I think it released a little bit earlier than skin tints and light coverage foundations really became a hit. So I think that's one reason why that collection didn't do well. But I've also heard not a lot of people liked the formula. So if the formula doesn't work, go back to the drawing board, reformulate. But they didn't. And I'm sure they had many reasons for why they didn't do so. And I'm sure it was just a progressive thing over and over again. And COVID was kind of just the last straw and the brand had to close. I do think if Becca ended up collabing with more influencers like they did with Jaclyn Hill with the Champagne Pop highlighter, there would be more hype around the brand, there would be more interest around the brand, but they just kept collabing with celebrities. We in the beauty industry don't really care and don't have a huge following and love for celebrities like we do influencers and content creators and beauty creators on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, wherever, you know. So I think that was one of their biggest letdowns for why the brand wasn't doing as well as it could have been doing. There wasn't enough potential in the products that they wanted to release. Again, with some of the odd releases they had that zero pigment foundation. While that was a very, very odd release, it did bring some hype and some talk to the Becca brand. But I think if they were going to release something like that to have the brand be talked about, they needed to release something else directly after it that would have been a huge hyped up product, and they didn't. I think if they would have released maybe their skin tint directly after the zero pigment foundation, there would have been a much different outcome to both of those products than what there was. You know, I don't think it just comes down, like I said, to COVID. I'm sure there's many, many other reasons why Becca is closing down. I think COVID was just the last straw. Their sales weren't high enough, unfortunately. And, you know, this is such a crazy changing beauty industry. Everything is so fast paced. You need to be on trend. If you're not releasing something fairly often, you're going to be forgotten. And that's my main point to me talking about what brands I think could be next. So let's get into those. I had to write down a list as to who I think could be next. And this isn't me shading any of these brands. Most of these brands I really enjoy. It's just I think they need to step it up or they're going to end up being forgotten about. So my first brand is Violet Voss. Now, before I wrote them down, they did release another eyeshadow palette, which was smart on their end, but they keep releasing a similar eyeshadow palette to all the ones they've released before. And that reminds me of Morphe. I think Morphe is becoming forgotten. They're never going to be totally forgotten. I'm sure they're doing just fine because they have such a cult following behind them. I don't think Violet Voss has that cult following that Morphe relies on. So I think Violet Voss really needs to take a step back, look at recent trends, and kind of morph their brand to fit those trends. And I find that similar to a lot of brands that have slowly been forgotten. Another one is Beauty Blender. The biggest release Beauty Blender has is the Beauty Blender sponge. Why I think if they don't change their company, they're going to be the next one who could potentially go out of business. Their biggest repurchase and their biggest product or most hyped product is the Beauty Blender sponge. It's a $20 sponge. There are tons and tons of other brands who have beauty sponges that, in my personal opinion, are way better than the Beauty Blender sponge at a fraction of the price as well. So to have your most popular product be so expensive, I think it's going to shift what people purchase from you, especially if now, like during COVID, If someone needs to buy a beauty sponge and they're on a tight budget, they're not buying the Beauty Blender. 9 times out of 10, they're not buying the Beauty Blender. I can guarantee you that. They're going to buy the e.l.f. They're going to buy an Ofra sponge. They're going to buy Morphe sponge, Real Techniques. There are so many other sponges on the market that are more accessible and way cheaper and just as good quality as the Beauty Blender. Now, I know the Beauty Blender has other products besides just the Beauty Blender sponge. They had foundations, they had concealers. I know a lot of people liked both of them, but there needs to be more. They need to morph their brand to fit some trends that are happening right now. I don't think just releasing new colors of the Beauty Blender is going to cut it, which is all I've seen them do, unfortunately. The next brand I think that could be having an issue and potential closing down is Buxom. Again, Buxom has a fairly good range of products. They've got lipsticks, lip glosses, blushes. They have a few bronzers now, but my gripe with Buxom is their most popular product are lip glosses. Yes, lip glosses need repurchased fairly often, but there are so many better gloss formulas out on the market. I personally do not like a minty feeling lip gloss. Every one of their glosses are minty, so that's cutting an entire group out that would purchase your product just because it's minty and tingly. I hate those. I love those tinted lip oils, the really glossy formulas. What I think would benefit Buxom is if they know they do lip glosses well, and everybody knows that the lip glosses from Buxom are highly rated, come out with another formula of lip glosses. Come out with lip shines like the e-balms like Persona did, or come out with a lip oil, even like a glossy balm type of formula like Rare Beauty came out with. Something that's not minty, something that's a little bit more comfortable to wear. It's not as sticky like the Buxom lip glosses, and something that's trendy. That is the big key point that I want to make, is it needs to be on trend. Release something new that's on trend. That's what's going to get your brand to be talked about. Buxom is a huge brand, but they need to do something more if they don't want to close down. Another brand that I wouldn't be surprised if I thought they were closing anytime soon is the brand Cover FX. I have not heard any news about Cover FX. They're largely a base makeup company. I think their most recent release was probably primers, but they haven't had a huge release recently, and I think that's what's going to keep them from moving forward in this industry. You need some type of release, something that's on trend. They did amazing complexion products. Why not release, liquid blushes or a skin tint? Release something that's in trend, on trend. You can release now, gets your hype up for your brand. They need to do something, but I haven't seen anything. Another company I think could be falling on the wayside is Hourglass. Now, because Hourglass's most famous products are their complexions, so blushes, bronzers, highlights, powders, you don't need to purchase those nearly as often as you would a concealer or a mascara. They need to change something. I just don't know what it is. They have beautiful blush powders. Maybe they need to release a liquid blush, something that's trendy again, but this is where I think Hourglass is going to have an issue and what could lead to their demise. People have over and over and over again told and mentioned something about Hourglass and their inclusivity. Clearly, it seems to me that Hourglass does not care if their products suit your skin tone if you are darker than a medium skin tone. I don't think any of their blushes would work well for someone of a deeper skin tone, which says a lot. There has been so many people who said, I want this formula, but I want it to suit my skin tone. There have been content creators and beauty creators who are my skin tone, who have reached out to Hourglass to say, hey, why are your releases not inclusive enough? Or even their foundations are not inclusive enough. There's a few darker shades and a whole slew of light beige. Why? You can't say that nobody's buying your product who is of a darker skin tone when you don't market your products to work for them. Your products don't work for people with darker skin tones, so of course people with a darker skin tone are not going to buy from you. If you had those products available for darker and deep dark skin tones, they're going to buy from you. This is the beauty industry. If it's available for someone of a deep dark skin tone, just like it's available for someone of the fairest of fair, it's going to be bought. People are going to talk about it. This industry is huge. You're marketing yourself and limiting yourself to a specific amount of people when there's a whole other group over here that would still buy your product if you included them in it. They don't seem to care. So I think that's going to be their demise. There's so many more people who are my skin tone who are deciding not to purchase from them because they don't seem to care about being inclusive. Hard Candy is another brand that I think might be having an issue, and for all I know, they might not even be around, but it's a drugstore brand. Their products are subpar, in my opinion. There are many other drugstore brands that are doing so much better. Their formulas are so much better, and they're releasing so many more things than I've seen Hard Candy release. So I definitely think that's going to be a brand you're not going to see in the future just because their formulas are stuck in 2007. And another brand that we could see falling to the wayside could be Lorac. They just recently released a new eyeshadow palette. I'll try and post a photo somewhere if I remember. It was beautiful looking, but I didn't see any talk about it. I didn't see any momentum pushed about this palette on any beauty site. I didn't see it on Instagram. Like, I went to Lorac's site and I found it that way. And it's beautiful. Nobody's talking about it. And I don't know why. I don't know if people are just already forgetting Lorac. I know so many people used to be obsessed with their blushes. Again, why not release a serum blush? Release some cream products. Do something. They had a big hype around their contour palette when contouring palettes were huge. Try and find something else that's on trend. There's a lot of products you can choose from. There's a lot of trendy products right now. Most of their products are old news. They still have the same 5 palettes that they always have had. They're pro palettes. They're 14 pan palettes. It's like seeing all the same Naked palettes over and over again. Naked discontinued, their Urban Decay discontinued their Naked Original and their Naked 2. You can't buy those anymore anywhere, I don't think. Why is Lorac not doing the same thing? Why don't you discontinue the original Lorac Pro palette, whatever it's called, and reformulate it? Make it better. Make it the 2021 version of the original Lorac palette. Do something that makes people want to talk about your brand. It's not being talked about. It's going to be forgotten about. That's all there is to it. I think that's a trend for a lot of brands, and we are in hard times, so I think there's a lot of brands who can't do a ton of releases, but you don't need to have a big release. Find one thing that's on trend. It's going to be talked about in the beauty community. It gets posted everywhere. If another brand releases another glossy lip balm or a liquefied lip balm version, it's going to be hyped up. It's going to be talked about because everybody wants one of those right now. To see some of these brands doing absolutely nothing and still releasing the same powder blushes, the same full coverage matte foundations, the same liquid lipsticks that are all these pinky shades that nobody really purchases, it's not going to be enough. So I think that's where I'm going to stop. I could rant on and on about even more brands that I think could have an issue in the future, but I won't. Do you think there's any other brands that you could see closing down that I didn't name? I'd love to know your thoughts on this. There's a ton of other people that have done videos like this. If I remember a few, I'll leave them down in the description bar. So go check those out as well. This is a really interesting topic, and because of this one brand closing down, I do think we could potentially see a domino effect happen. Again, I'm just surprised that it was Becca first and not another brand. So we'll see what the future has in store, I guess. Who knows? This isn't going to be the only one. I'm sure there's going to be more in 2021 that we see closing their doors. So thanks for watching. Hope this was interesting. Subscribe if you want to. I try and put up as many videos as I can a week. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.